Today, on our live stream broadcast, you'll discover the latest ArcGIS release bringing new capabilities you've been asking for, enhancements that redefine what's possible with your work as told directly from the product development teams. Modernizing GIS workflows. New approaches help bridge the gap between local communities and the Bureau of Land Management as they take on increasingly complex challenges. A nation in crisis and responding. As professionals race to build tools to understand the spread of the global pandemic and inform decision-making for response efforts, the team from Johns Hopkins University shares their story of mapping a defining moment in world health. Lending a helping hand. The Seneca Nation uses GIS to preserve their land and traditions, extending those capabilities during the pandemic to prioritize support for their most vulnerable populations. And things are heating up everywhere. Scientist, geologist, and astronaut Dr. Kathy Sullivan speaks frankly with Esri President Jack Dangerman on climate change and the importance of having a conversation for greater understanding. Your GIS News begins now. Welcome, everyone. I'm James Sullivan, coming at you live from our own Studio 100B in Esri's DC regional office. As you can likely tell, we're doing things a little different this morning, intending to brighten up your day as we bring you key GIS updates from our users and product development teams. While you're likely physically attending from the same quarantine home office you've been in for months now, we're going to treat you to a virtual trip from DC to California across America as we bring you the GIS news for Wednesday, February 24th. First up, the headline report on new ArcGIS capabilities. Released in December 2020, the latest version of ArcGIS Pro contains a wealth of enhancements aimed at increasing the speed and efficiency with which you complete your work. From the ability to connect directly to a GNSS device, to cartographic upgrades like blending modes and the new fan favorite eyedropper, to 67 new geoprocessing tools, this release contains something for everyone. Also released in December, the current version of ArcGIS Online improves your experience configuring web application templates, getting started with notebooks, managing your data, and securing your information by enforcing the use of HTTPS in modern browsers. In other exciting news, Esri released a new product last month, ArcGIS Platform. This is a location platform as a service designed to bring powerful mapping and location capabilities to the global developer community. This means they'll get an excellent developer experience through Esri's API and open source mapping libraries to leverage a comprehensive set of industry-leading capabilities, all packaged in a straightforward and open business model. As for what's on the horizon, well, if you're currently working with Kubernetes and maintaining a complex multi-machine ArcGIS Enterprise environment, the next release of Enterprise, expected in late spring, has something just for you. ArcGIS Enterprise on Kubernetes. This new cloud-native architecture offers a more resilient, maintainable, and scalable deployment option to meet your needs. That's it for the headlines. Now, let's go to some home offices of our software development staff for an exclusive insider look at what they're working on. Our first story brings us to the wintry home office of a Living Atlas team member in Lansing, Michigan. You've likely read his blogs and wondered, can someone truly be that excited about maps? Well, see for yourself. To share his insider map-making tips, let's go to Esri's cartographer extraordinaire, John Nelson.
We get to work with maps, which is so fun. A map is a powerful visual connection that bridges all that investment in data and analysis to the people and processes that need it. Making clear and beautiful maps in ArcGIS, I'm excited to say, is easier than ever. I think one of the most exciting new features that enables this sort of adventure is the introduction of blend modes. Blend modes pull in some of the most powerful capabilities of top-tier graphic design tools and make them available directly to map makers, right in ArcGIS Pro and the Map Viewer Beta in both ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. Where before we might overlay a semi-transparent hillshade layer and lose a little bit of the richness of our map's colors, now we can use the Multiply blend mode to easily and beautifully weave topography directly into our map and still maintain the richness of the imagery and thematic colors. I say easy, but it's also engaging. Here's a charming and focused map that my 13-year-old daughter Willow made with the destination atop blend mode, that uses Living Atlas biodiversity hotspots like a cookie cutter to reveal only the vibrant base map below. Base maps are a critical component of our work, and now any one base map can become potentially hundreds of base maps by using the luminosity blend mode to repaint any base map by that of its background color. And when it comes to data, all sorts of amazing combinations are now possible. This map of broadband accessibility is given a human focus by using a blend mode to visually clip it to only where people actually live. Speaking of where we live, check out this gorgeous Earth at night imagery from NASA. What better way could we see a portrait of 7.5 billion people? But if we zoom in on population centers, we're effectively looking into a light bulb. The overlay blend mode lets us use these lights to illuminate rather than obscure a rich world imagery base map below. So I've shown you some examples of blending in ArcGIS Pro and online, but there are lots more new tools to help you take your maps to the next level. For example, the new visual effects available in the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. Crisp smoke forecast vectors now become wispy and smoothed, more naturally echoing the phenomenon that they represent. Reams and reams of overlapping vessel paths instead coalesce into a glowing and living breadcrumb of travel and commerce. I definitely encourage you to take advantage of the many new and powerful visual tools and techniques available in ArcGIS. Have fun. Make beautiful things. Take back that graphic control and blend up some maps that communicate and inspire.
Fascinating stuff, John. And remember that blending modes are just one of Pro's many new cartographic techniques you can use to improve your maps in a matter of seconds. Continuing down that path of making beautiful, impactful maps, let's head southwest to sunny Redlands, California for an update from Diana Lavery of Esri's Policy Maps team.
There are many issues facing our country right now: COVID, climate, racial equity, economic recovery, and more. Policymakers and business leaders need data to tackle these challenges. But they need more than just the data itself. Policy maps put that data into context. Esri Maps for Public Policy contains an ever-growing collection of hundreds of maps ready to use and share directly in your work. Smart mapping styles in ArcGIS Online bring this data to life. For example, one of our favorites right now shows which way things are going in terms of active cases of COVID. This map shows both the direction and the magnitude of change in the past week. Now, this is critical information for expanding test sites, reopening schools and businesses, and equitable vaccine distribution. The mapping style here conveys that information clearly and effectively, making it easy to interpret. Many of the layers behind policy maps have data disaggregated by age group, sex, and race ethnicity. This is critical data for doing racial equity impact assessments and healthcare planning. And the data is also timely, like monthly unemployment estimates that get refreshed as soon as those numbers are put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This can help us know where to strengthen small business and our workforce. And our popular layers of Census Bureau's American Community Survey are also refreshed as soon as that data is available from the source, which means that you always have the most up-to-date data in your maps and analysis. Now that data can come through in the pop-up. Configuring a pop-up to include a chart or to show some color can help illuminate insights otherwise hidden in the data. Like this map here, which shows women least likely to receive mammogram screenings. And these maps are also portable across the ArcGIS suite of products. Browse the Policy Map site and find a map you like, then easily share it into a story map or a hub site. Esri's Racial Equity Hub does this, allowing you to map and analyze inequities in child poverty, homeownership, income, characteristics of foreign-born populations, and more. These are just some of the maps available in the Policy Map site. The thoughtful cartography make them presentation ready, and the pop-ups turn data into information. and they're available to share with anyone crafting data-driven policy.
Thanks, Diana. I encourage everyone to browse the policy maps on the Living Atlas to learn more. Now let's change things up a little from our home offices and travel America alongside fellow federal government GIS professionals. We're going to leave the DC Beltway and go into the field where many of you are working. And what better way to kick this off than with custodians of our federal lands, the Bureau of Land Management.
Welcome to the Bureau of Land Management. My name's Dario Lenardi, the National Geospatial Program Manager. All of us at the Bureau of Land Management have a tremendous responsibility for managing 245 million acres of public land and 700 million acres of subsurface minerals. We're proud to manage this land to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of public lands for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. To successfully manage public lands at this scale, BLM leverages enterprise GIS technology.
Hi, I'm Marissa Monger, BLM's GIS Modernization Project Lead, coming to you from Southwest Oregon. Through BLM's GIS Modernization Project, we've had the unique opportunity to explore GIS technology and apply its functionality in support of BLM's multiple use mission. With offices from Florida to Alaska, this bureau-wide effort involves GIS and IT staff from all levels of the organization. While we cannot all be in here in person with you today, we wanted to share a few examples of innovative approaches we have discovered during our modernization efforts.
Hey guys, I'm Daniel Fleming, here today at Manassas National Battlefield Park in Northern Virginia. One innovation is the popular BLM Record of the Week story map, produced by the Bureau's General Land Office. The GLO team builds these story maps featuring a historic land record from the Bureau's archives, using ArcGIS Pro to more efficiently georeference records and publish to ArcGIS Online. We have broadened our reach to our audiences by connecting history to the records. BLM has also co-authored story maps with sister agencies, such as the National Park Service, to better educate and share this information with the American public. In celebration of Black History Month, GLO developed a record of the week that features Selma, Alabama. Significant for its place in the civil rights movement, this location was the starting point for the marches from Selma to Montgomery.
Hello, Martin Visaraga here, speaking directly to you from central New Mexico. The BLM is partnering with a variety of federal agencies and non-federal organizations for the Seeds of Success initiative. Healthy ecosystems provide the essential ecological services upon which all life depends, including our own. Using mobile technology, Seeds of Success teams effectively coordinate seed collection using a common protocol, enabling collections to be preserved and referenced internationally. The use of this technology helps conserve and develop native plant materials for stabilizing, rehabilitating, and restoring lands in the United States. To date, Seeds of Success has over 24,000 native seed collections, protecting biodiversity for future generations.
Greetings from the last frontier. I'm Kathy Hillis, the Geospatial Manager from BLM Alaska. Another example of innovative ways we are using GIS can be found in supporting the unprecedented 2020 fire season. BLM GIS professionals develop multiple state applications, dashboards, and other tools to help wildland firefighters make quick decisions. By doing so, we have reduced the risk of wildfire nationwide, treating 5.4 million acres of land since 2017. In 2020, BLM treated 1.5 million acres, a 10-year high. BLM is refining these same tools to more efficiently tackle climate change in the future.
We have discovered that GIS modernization has brought our community and the organization closer together to tackle the tough challenges facing our Bureau. As we work together to manage America's vast public lands, we are more successful when we collaborate and interconnect our systems. Through helping our neighbor, we help ourselves. By embracing BLM's inclusive culture, together we are able to achieve more. We are one BLM, one GIS.
What a timely reminder on the importance of collaboration and how much more we can achieve by working together. Our next stop across America brings us just north of New York City in the Hudson River Valley to hear the story of two Army colonels who helped their installation respond to the coronavirus pandemic, armed only with their WITS and Esri technical certifications. That installation is the United States Military Academy at West Point, and their work is ushering in a geospatial revolution across all aspects of Academy life. Here's their story.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel William Wright.
And I'm Colonel Chris Oxenbein.
Welcome to the United States Military Academy at West Point. We're really excited to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing in the discipline of GIS over the last year.
In 2020, while the cadets were on spring break, the superintendent decided not to have them return to West Point due to COVID-19. In that window of time, the superintendent asked repeatedly for a map so that he would maintain situational awareness of where his staff, faculty, coaches, cadets, and cadet candidates were located. So when we started building him his map, instead of providing a static map, we built a dynamic dashboard where he and his staff could zoom in and zoom out of areas and identify those people that have not yet returned stateside.
Hello, I'm Colonel Al Boyer, Director of the Department of Military Instruction here at West Point. Last summer, I was in search of capabilities similar to what we call the Blue Force Tracker in the United States Army, which allows me to have real-time situational awareness of the troops on the ground, as well as to send logistical and operational reports. Working with GIS and using off-the-shelf commercial technology, we were able to develop the Gray Force Tracker, which provided me that situational awareness. Furthermore, it also exposed the cadets to how the Army tracks its forces in both a combat and training environment.
Top 2 lessons learned. Key leaders should integrate GIS experts early into the planning process, and GIS experts can facilitate this by being proactive. This early integration saves a lot of time later. Number 2, take advantage of the plethora of resources to learn how to use new tools and applications.
Recently, we've been asked to support numerous different projects. We incorporate cadets and faculty in these projects, and some of them include gridded raster graphic automation, Army-Navy seating plans during the COVID environment, tracking apps for summer training as well as for our Sandhurst competition, and semester abroad program apps.
The mission of the United States Military Academy is to educate, train, and inspire the Corps of Cadets to become commissioned leaders of character. Academically, we find it easy to inspire our cadets when they can apply GIS expertise to real-world scenarios. Go Army, be Navy.
Great work, gentlemen. It's reassuring to know that our future Army leaders receive such diverse educational experiences, encouraging them to challenge the status quo and seek to develop innovative solutions. Our next destination isn't quite so far away. In fact, it's right behind me. We have a special opportunity to hear from 2 of Esri's top national government directors, Patty Mims and Brian Lehman, who have the unique purview across all geospatial happenings in the national government space. Let's go to the other side of the glass now to get their take on key GIS trends around sharing and collaboration.
Brian, it is so great to see you in person. It's been such a long time since we've been together.
It's great to see you as well, Patty, and I cannot believe how this year has flown by, and here we are at FedGIS again.
I know this is my favorite time of the year. It's a time we come together to hear about all of the innovation that's happening across the federal government to address the challenges.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was blown away by the work our users were doing with story maps, and they continue to find new and innovative ways to communicate, both internally and externally.
I know my family has been getting outdoors much more recently, and we've been using the National Park Service's trail story maps to plan our hikes. And the National Park Service is also using story maps to help communicate around critical issues like Yellowstone and protecting its water.
Our users continue to do amazing work with story maps. But we've noticed a trend over the last year, which is an explosion in the use of dashboards.
Oh my gosh, the Johns Hopkins University dashboard is amazing. And we've seen dashboards be adopted by many organizations. For example, another dashboard that we saw a lot on the news was the US Northcom dashboard, and how the commanding general was using that for situational awareness on a daily basis to manage the command.
Yeah, and my favorite senior leader quote from the entire last year came from the South Carolina National Guard and the Major General leading their COVID response. And he said, "I'm being briefed 3 times a week, but I've relied on that dashboard almost hourly for more than 300 days.
But they're not just for executives. The World Health Organization has been using dashboards to communicate out key performance indicators around COVID globally and specifically to the ministries of health. And they've been tracking COVID, but now we're seeing this shift to actually helping with the dissemination of vaccinations across our nation.
And it isn't just COVID either. We're seeing users create dashboards to report on everything from map production statistics to personnel readiness and the availability of critical resources to support operations.
And over the summer, we saw this uptick around weather events. So supporting hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and of course, the Census Bureau was using dashboards to ensure that they count everyone once, only once, and in the right place, just to name a few examples.
And now the latest trend we're seeing is agencies working together, deploying hubs to create a destination for collaboration. They're bringing data, apps, and organizations together to focus on key initiatives and major issues. Hubs are uniting organizations to tackle challenges like climate change, racial equity, and emergency management.
So those aren't just one agency issues. Those require a whole of government approach, and sharing and collaborating are key and paramount. We've also seen ArcGIS Hub help federal agencies to coordinate and move forward around a common map and a shared goal.
And now we're seeing organizations like FEMA lead on this, both with COVID and emergency management. Hubs are linking organizations to critical data sets that need to be shared across a broad community of users. And there are other examples as well. We're seeing this with the American Red Cross and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, fielding hubs to support their own initiatives.
So there's really been these three big trends. Story maps have increased over the last few years. Dashboards really exploded in use in 2020. And ArcGIS Hub has become this destination for collaboration to really connect everyone. So this is just a few of the trends that we've seen on the Esri National Government team. And we believe that you have been seeing the same thing.
Thanks for sharing your insights, Patty and Brian. Now, let's take a quick trip to South Riding, Virginia for an Esri update on our national mapping solutions from Kevin Twombly, one of our lead product developers.
Thanks, James. I know that many of our national mapping customers have been waiting to migrate from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. But over the past year, while we've all been stuck at home, there have been a lot of great new product advancements, and I believe that now is the time for our topo, aviation, and maritime users to dive into ArcGIS Pro. I'd like to share with you today some news about some enhancements for three of our national mapping solutions: topographic mapping, aviation charting, and maritime charting. Let's start with topographic mapping. There are three new advancements that I want to share with you today that will better enable topographic mapping in ArcGIS Pro. First, the 2.7 release now includes everything you need to produce defense and civilian topographic mapping products. Geodatabase models, cartographic rules, and pre-configured TopoMap templates are now included with the software. Second, the pre-configured ArcGIS Workflow Manager workflows that you've used for years in ArcMap are now available in ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Production Mapping and ArcGIS Defense Mapping both now include simplified workflows to support data maintenance, field editing, generalization, and cartographic production, all in the box. And third, to support more efficient and automated multi-scale mapping, ArcGIS Pro 2.7 includes new geoprocessing models that generalize large-scale topo data to smaller scales. Features like roads and hydro can be automatically thinned to support smaller scale maps while honoring your organization's cartographic specifications. Next, we have Esri's ArcGIS Aviation Charting solution, which continues to add more and more capabilities to ArcGIS Pro. The focus of development over the past year has been on adding support for the latest industry standards and expanding data management capabilities. Users can now import data in the AIXM 5.1 specification into an aviation geodatabase. This data can then be used to generate aviation cartographic features and build aviation charting products using ICAO styles and symbols, which are included with ArcGIS Pro. And to further enable aviation chart maintenance, users can take advantage of the new data management toolset to generate airspace lines and derived airspace geometries, which are essential for safety of navigation. And finally, for our maritime users, Esri's ArcGIS Maritime solution has made significant progress over the past year with adding new capabilities to ArcGIS Pro. Some of the new enhancements that I recommend you look at are, first, the ability to import and export your IHO, S57, and S101 formatted data. Second, explore the new tools for creating, editing, and validating nautical chart data in the geodatabase. Third, check out the new server-based capabilities that support publishing REST and OGC services using not only the default IHO S52 symbology standard, but now custom symbology using SVG symbols. So what does that mean? It means that organizations like NOAA can now present their electronic chart data through web services using their own national paper chart symbology. And to top it off, these maritime services can be combined with other services like a bathy hillshade or imagery for generating custom nautical chart outputs using the latest product-on-demand solution. So these are just a few of the exciting new advancements that will now enable our national mapping users to support their missions using ArcGIS Pro. Back to you, James.
Thanks, Kevin. Continuing with our product team updates, we'll now hear from David Cardella at our corporate headquarters to shine a little more light on our exciting new Platform as a Service offering, better known as ArcGIS Platform. Over to you, David.
Thanks, James. Developers realize the value that meaningful maps can bring to their solutions. We all want best-of-breed location services that can be easily integrated into our apps. To some of us, open source mapping libraries are important because it gives us the control and flexibility we need during the development process. Introducing ArcGIS Platform, Esri's location platform as a service product for developers. With ArcGIS Platform, we're enabling a broader community of developers to use maps and location services to build solutions that are powering the world. These live, interactive apps are engaging, they're dynamic, and they're purposeful. They're creating deeper understanding for consumers, citizens, and organizations. ArcGIS Platform allows developers to extend ArcGIS in ways they're already familiar with. For example, ArcGIS Platform comes with ArcGIS Online. It's the ArcGIS platform that is used by the developer when they're extending ArcGIS Online by building custom apps. ArcGIS Pro also works with ArcGIS Platform. So when a developer builds a custom configuration or an add-in, often these extensions are using location services coming from ArcGIS Platform. So these are examples of using the platform as a complement to other components of ArcGIS. But the platform can be used completely independently as well, allowing developers to build standalone applications, embed location intelligence into existing apps, or deploy our location services within an organization's infrastructure by leveraging a system-to-system development pattern. As you can see, ArcGIS Platform underpins much of what we do in ArcGIS. ArcGIS Platform is made up of three high-level elements. First, an excellent developer experience, giving you the choice to use the mapping libraries that come with ArcGIS Platform or the mapping library of your choice. Second, a transparent and easy-to-understand business model. And third, the centerpiece of ArcGIS Platform is a comprehensive set of industry-leading location services that include a wide variety of content and capabilities. Let's take a look at these services in a bit more detail. These are the same location services that you as an ArcGIS developer have been using for years. We've just made it a little easier to access and integrate these services and capabilities into your solution. They include dozens of pre-styled base maps, the ability to visualize and analyze both 2D and 3D content. It includes hundreds of other layers, including demographic and statistical data. Also, powerful and sophisticated capabilities come with ArcGIS Platform, such as spatial analytics, image analysis, real-time mapping, and IoT integration. And that was a quick sneak peek of the new ArcGIS Platform product. James, back to you.
Thanks, David. Go to developers.arcgis.com to learn more and get started. Our next story needs little introduction. As the coronavirus pandemic raced across the nation last March, one dashboard quickly rose to prominence as the authoritative source for infection rate information. For our first keynote interview of the morning, let's go to Johns Hopkins University with Beth Blauer, the Executive Director of the Centers for Civic Impact, and Esri's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Esti Garrity.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, Beth. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. I mean, think about where we are now and compared that to when we met. I think, gosh, it was about 8 years ago. And I was at the state of California and the Department of Public Health, just starting this open data initiative. And you actually were, you had just left the state of Maryland. You were directing state stat for the governor, and you really became one of my key data experts at the time. And so here we are now at what we kind of hope is getting toward a tail end of a global pandemic. And we can recognize that public data, that thing that you and I both love so much, is having this very special moment. What's different now?
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's been a really long 8 years, and most of that length, I think, occurring in the last 12 months. So, we are in such a exceptional moment in time, and particularly for data. And so here we are now with vaccines being, jabbed in arms. And we finally see a little bit of that glimmer at the light of the end of the tunnel. And one of the big headlines from this global experience of COVID that we've had is data, and the moment that data has had, and the role that data has played in not only framing our daily activities and the way that we interact with each other and our families, but also the way that public policymakers have been thinking about their response to COVID and everything related in between. And so, yeah, we are here at a very different place than we have ever been as we think about public data and data as an asset.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys, and I've spoken about it many times in many different venues at Johns Hopkins, have really created a new standard for open data and sharing, and you've enabled thousands to do more with data around COVID-19.
That's right. So, we're now coming, or just past our 1 year anniversary, where Dr. Gardner, my friend and colleague here at Johns Hopkins University, started tracking the pandemic in our global map. And the map itself has really been a lightning rod for huge dialogue and conversation, not only around COVID, but around the role that data has played. And we've become that standard bearer. In the absence of a global standard, we have had to kind of step up and fill in. And we're seeing it also nationally. In the absence of standards, have really been at the front lines of not only understanding the data, understanding what it means, understanding how it's impacting policy decisions, but also understanding why these standards are so important, and the creation of a common language around this disease in particular, but around public health in general, has never been more urgent. And we're seeing, really the need for that and the urgency in all fronts, in both the public health response, the medical response, and the policy response.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true. I mean, I think what the Hopkins data did was really expose in a very painful way some of that lack of data standardization. And I wonder what you think. I mean, that seems like something that we should be able to get a hold of, right, and do better in terms of data standards. And of course, in this scenario, you and I are having this conversation before a federal government audience. What do you think is the federal government's role in supporting data standards?
Look, I think the CDC, has done as good a job as possible given the kind of framework or the context that they've been working within. And we've seen actually, even in the last several months, some really great guidance around how data should be collected, how data should be shared. But it's not necessarily the kind of influence that the states really need. At this point, the states and local government really need very clear reporting requirements. You're getting these vaccinations, and in return, this data will be returned. So, we are like very, very in a very precarious situation. We don't know who has received all of the vaccines. We're in the same place that we were around the testing data, where we don't have the sort of demographic and ethnic breakdown of the data. And this is really indicative of larger persistent issues in our public health infrastructure. And I think the federal government has an incredible opportunity to kind of dismantle some of these systems that have created some really significant barriers for local government, for state government, and for the federal government to not only lead through this pandemic, but to make sure that our most vulnerable populations across the United States are deeply connected to the resources that they need to navigate through the pandemic, to understand how it's impacting their families, and to get the care that they need so that we can heal and move forward.
Well, you mentioned vulnerable populations. Of course, that terminology is a part of a number of different terms that really relate to health equity, something that we all care about. And it occurs to me, certainly based on practice, that not everybody is collecting the data that will help us to analyze and get to health equity. Are you seeing the same things? Is it being collected, data on age and gender and race, ethnicity, and other factors that could really help us better understand?
Yeah, I mean, this is the crux of the issue. It's not being consistently collected. So we know that we are having persistent challenges in just even creating that common language. One of the things I admire most about the GIS community is that they spend a lot of time thinking about how do we define things in the same way? How do we create standards, and we create collection methodologies that can be scaled across geography? And that's not what we're seeing right now. We're seeing states taking different approaches on how they define things. We're seeing states taking different approaches on what data they are collecting. And while we have greatly improved our visibility into who has died and who has contracted the disease, we are still not getting any consistent data around who has access to testing and who is getting vaccinated. And so it's something that is really going to impair our ability to comprehensively respond to what is still a very much active pandemic here in the United States.
Well, I think it's a really big change in mindset that would have to occur in order for the federal government to really be a stronger force with the state and local governments to say this is mandatory and we need to do this. Of course, the states have traditionally done things their own ways, and we can see some of the ongoing issues with that, as you've mentioned. And it makes me think of something else that you were saying. You were talking about data and aligning with policy. So this mindset change is one part of that, but I think you also meant other things in terms of data aligning with policy and sort of that idea of actionable information. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you of all people know that this has been the center of my career in government, outside of government, which is that, this database should be driving decision making. And honestly, up until the first vaccination started being disseminated in our communities in the last several weeks, months, public policy was our only lever. It was our only intervention that we had to stop the spread of the disease, to slow the spread of the disease. And when I talk about public policy, I'm talking about mask mandates, I'm talking about closures of schools and economies, and all of these decisions are being framed by data. And it's not just data around this disease, it's kind of those critical data sets that all governments are collecting around the populations that are being impacted, the census of how many children are in school, how many have access to the resources they need to learn at home. We have seen emerging data in the fabric of public health that we've never seen before. Things like broadband all of a sudden is a critical public health asset. Things like whether or not we have transportation so that you can go to drive-through testing or vaccination sites. These are questions that are answered by public data sets that far expand the kind of traditional epidemiological data sets that we're using to model disease. These are things that we know mayors and governors are using all the time to influence budget making and policy making. And I'm not sure we're quite there yet, really, at that sort of nexus of being able to speak in that common language and really understand how we should be framing our use of data in decision making. But we have been tracking these policy decisions up against the disease, and you can really see the impact that some of that smart thinking has had on outcomes in disproportionate places across the array of response we've seen in the US.
Well, and that goes to the geographic question, which I'm passionate about. But you mentioned, you guys are working on that, and I know you're doing a lot of great things. Everybody knows about the dashboard that has been seen trillions of times now and used very effectively. And we talked about the data sharing, but you guys have been doing other cool things. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, so this is where we sort of are now, and we continue to evolve the resources. We have enjoyed a great partnership with Esri around the global map, and that is really something that we covet at the university, and have been able to share not only the sort of base of our tracking for the map and in our US views, our dashboards with local governments and states that have been replicating and using our data to power their own decision making. But we're looking forward now to figuring out how can we start to really use the full breadth of resources that are available to us to track things like our hospitalization rates and what are the intersections of our hospitalization rates against not only the ebbs and flows of the disease, but around the capacity that we just have in our health infrastructure. And so we're using tools now that we haven't been able to use up until now to really start looking at that data and to really visualize that data all through sort of the ArcGIS platform, but really understanding the intersection of the technology and the kind of problems that we're trying to solve has been a really exciting moment for us. And so you'll see some of that developing in our analysis. We're using a lot of public health expertise too. One of the benefits of being at Hopkins, our mission is knowledge for the world, and we're bringing in public health expertise on vaccination, on testing, but also on some of the real constraints that our communities are feeling as it relates to access to services. And we're trying to connect that deeply with the data. So we're going to see also some of that analysis emerge out of this and start thinking about how do we democratize science in a way that we've been able to in COVID to really get at some of the more deeply rooted issues that our communities are facing.
That's so cool. You guys are doing amazing work. And I do have to say, I especially love your hospital capacity map, to be able to watch the capacity change over time and get that temporal component. And then even just the decision making as a physician or as a public health leader, to be able to see, nearby hospitals where one has capacity and a number of others don't, and you can see the direction of infection spread. I mean, it's like, okay, well, the decisions then become obvious in a way that they never were before. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing very much. As we think about, again, this audience that is watching us have this conversation, I think of them as the change makers, right? These are the people in our government who are actively working to make our country a better place and to solve the problems of the pandemic. So if you had your wish list and you could ask these folks, what would you say would be the most practical early steps with all of your years of data expertise that you wish we could all take moving forward?
I think that it's not the most exciting area to think about, but governance has been the real Achilles heel of our pandemic response. The fact that Johns Hopkins University is still powering a lot of the data and a lot of the view of the way that this pandemic has unfolded is really a call to action around how do we start to standardize the way that we think about data collection in a global pandemic, but also just generally in the field of health. And start creating some of that governance, whether that's with our international partners or whether that's here just in the United States, so that our states are not positioned to have to kind of navigate these really incredibly difficult circumstances without that kind of North Star, without that kind of ability to borrow good practice from their neighbors, to borrow good practice from the federal government. I know that there are lots of committed public sector workers that are actively also trying to create these economies of scale, and being able to have some structure, some ability to speak those common languages are going to go miles for our practitioners, who I know are deeply committed to deploying resources and solutions fast and at high quality.
Okay, well, I think that's a great answer. And I'm just going to disagree with one part of it. I think if we imagine the outcome, governance becomes very sexy. And so for all of the audience, you heard it here first, focus on governance as recommended by our expert today, Beth Blauer. And thank you. It's so good to catch up with you, Beth. And thank you for all the work that you and your team of women leaders in tech are doing at Johns Hopkins University.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. It's always great to be here with you.
What an amazing behind-the-scenes conversation on what the JHU team is working on and how they're overcoming challenges. Lessons we all can learn from. Shifting back to our product team updates, this next one will be particularly relevant for those of you supporting national security efforts. From her Idaho home office, let's go to Natalie Feuerstein, lead product owner for ArcGIS Solutions for Intelligence.
Thanks, James. At the recent release of ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Pro Intelligence, we introduced a movement analysis toolset to help you make sense of all your movement data. Movement analysis contains tools that analyze point track data, including comparing tracks over different areas, extracting unique identifiers from a point track dataset, and identifying locations where tracks meet. Now, you might be asking, what exactly is movement data? Well, you've likely seen or heard of movement data, but you may have called it something else, like GPS data, telemetry, tracking data, or even mobile marketing data. Movement data is typically collected in high volumes, but the only required information is a unique track ID, location, and a date timestamp. Let's take a look at these newly released tools and the problems they can solve. Movement data without context really just looks like a whole bunch of dots. To make sense of these dots, classified movement events categorize point track locations as turning, stopping, and accelerating to determine how the device or object was moving. To help you answer questions such as, how fast was it going? Where did it stop? And where did it turn around? When two or more devices are traveling together within a specified distance and time, they may be working together, or maybe they're associated through their travel behaviors alone. So when you need to answer the question, who is traveling together? Use Find Co-Travelers to identify devices that may be traveling together by comparing near tracks within a time interval to find behaviorally relevant relationships. In other cases, you may need to pinpoint areas where devices are showing up together and determine how long the devices were there. In other words, who is meeting together, where are they meeting, and for how long? Find Meeting Locations looks at dwell times to find areas where separate devices are stopping together. On the flip side, when you already have known areas of interest, say around protected federal facilities, you may want to find out which devices were present at each location and for how long. Was a unique device present at more than one location of interest? Compare Areas finds unique device counts across multiple known areas of interest. Now, these tools are powerful, helping you quickly pull meaning from massive amounts of collected data. But what I'm most excited about is how you can infer possible relationships as a result of movement analysis. That is, two entities may have a relationship if they are repeatedly co-located in both space and time. Using the movement tools and link analysis, you can uncover those hidden relationships in your data.
Thanks, Natalie. And as a reminder, at the current release of ArcGIS Pro, all of the intelligence tools now come in the box, no separate install required. Continuing on, our next tour stop brings us down south to the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the Tennessee Valley Authority is standing by the Chickamauga Dam to share their story with us.
Coming to you from Chickamauga Dam in Chattanooga, Tennessee, one of 29 hydroelectric generators for the Tennessee Valley Authority. With our powerful dams as part of a diverse generation stack, TVA is proud to bring reliable energy to more than 9 million people over an 80,000 square mile service area. We deliver this important resource through 16,000 miles of transmission grid, working with over 150 local power companies to serve the Tennessee Valley. So how does GIS help TVA and the people of the Valley? Let's start with energy. By mapping our transmission and generation assets, we can add things like lightning strike locations to see trends that tell us where to harden our grid. We can add in weather and outage information so we can respond to emergencies more quickly and safely. Using GIS mobile solutions, our field staff can easily collect data for inspections, asset inventories, and observations. And with LiDAR data, we can show where trees and other vegetation could pose a threat to the poles, towers, and those thousands of miles of conductor. Igniting innovation is a key element of TVA's forward-looking vision. Our GIS and mapping group is always thinking outside the box to find creative solutions, like using complex spatial data and models to locate the best sites for new solar generation so we can support the shift to cleaner, renewable energy. We are supporting the transition to greater use of electric vehicles by mapping the locations of charging stations to show the best places to build out this important infrastructure. And one of our most exciting innovations is the digitization of almost 100 years of historic aerial film and creating stitched mosaics so this amazing imagery can be viewed in a web browser. Shifting gears to TVA's role as steward of the environment, our biologists and archaeologists use GIS every day to map threatened and endangered species, critical wetland habitats, and important cultural areas. And our aquatic biologists preserve the health and habitat of the Tennessee River watershed by using GIS to manage invasive species and ensure the integrity of the river for all its many uses. What's more, during large storm events, we can use GIS to predict areas of flooding so we can use our dams to control reservoir levels and reduce the chances of flood damage. TVA understands that the conservation and protection of these natural resources is directly related to the health and well-being of people too. Powerful partnerships is another key focus of TVA's vision of progress. Along with local power companies and local and state governments, we can achieve the third part of our mission, ensuring robust economic development. GIS helps us showcase all our area can offer, including great schools and community services, a ready workforce, a huge variety of recreation opportunities, and don't forget that reliable low-cost power. We also rely on our contractor partners to help us execute a wide variety of responsibilities. Indeed, one of our most important continuous improvement initiatives in GIS has been to provide spatial data models in our contracts that allow us to streamline incoming spatial information and reduce our labor costs of post-processing data. But our powerful partnerships go even further. From USGS to FEMA to the National Archives to the Department of Energy and the Department of Interior, these are just a few of the important relationships that help make TVA successful. Since TVA began in 1933 as part of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, our mapping experts have had a long history of service to the United States. Now we are embarking on an exciting new era of technology advancements in which GIS has the power to bring unexpected and amazing solutions to our most difficult challenges and our greatest aspirations for progress. It has been my pleasure to share how the Tennessee Valley Authority continues to carry out its mission of providing low-cost, reliable electricity, protecting the environment, and promoting economic prosperity for the people of the Tennessee Valley. Thank you.
What an electrifying story. Switching back to our product team updates, anyone regularly conducting field operations should turn up their audio and pay extra close attention to this next one. For the latest from our field operations team, let's head over to product engineer Demaya Curry.
Thanks, James. There's some exciting news. You asked for an all-in-one field app, and it's finally here. ArcGIS Field Maps is a new mobile app that combines the functions of 3 apps you already know and love: Collector, Tracker, and Explorer. With the functions of 3 apps wrapped into one, Field Maps is your go-to mobile mapping app. Let's look at a few of the new tools and features available with Field Maps. First, with Field Maps, you can fill out smart forms. Smart forms are adaptive digital forms. One major adaptive feature of smart forms is conditional visibility. With this feature, you can make certain form fields conditional, meaning they only appear when a user inputs a certain value into the form. Smart forms are also easily customizable, so you can configure and edit smart forms based on your workflows. For example, smart forms can be customized with grouping. This feature allows you to place smart form fields in groups or common sections. Field Maps also supports location tracking. Tracking creates a breadcrumb trail of your tracks, or the locations you have previously been. ArcGIS Field Maps continues the evolution of Tracker, allowing you to see your tracks and giving you the option to see the tracks of your coworkers. Field Maps also has many new tracking features. For instance, in Field Maps, you can set the duration of your tracks, meaning you can set how long location tracking is turned on. Tracks in Field Maps also contains data, like speed or altitude, so you can see the movement and performance of your mobile workers. Finally, the Field Maps web app is a new web-based tool that allows you to manage your maps for the field. In the web app, you can prepare and configure the maps workers will use for fieldwork. You also prepare the templates and smart forms mobile workers will use to collect data. The Field Maps web app is also the go-to place for enabling maps for offline use and creating offline map areas, so workers can use their map anywhere with or without a data connection. These are a few of the awesome new features available with Field Maps. Back to you, James.
Thanks to Maya. Great update on our streamlined approach to mobile workflows in the field. So far this morning, we've heard from a wide variety of people and organizations using ArcGIS to complete their important missions. One thing we've yet to discuss is their underlying infrastructure. Let's hop next door again to our 2 national government directors, Patty and Brian, to get further insights on emerging cloud deployment patterns from their unique vantage point across the whole of national government.
Thanks, James. Over the last year, we've had a lot of discussions around cloud deployment options. So we thought we would just take a few moments and share with you some of the questions that we get asked and some of the conversations that we've been having with colleagues, users, partners on almost a daily basis. So there are 3 patterns that we frequently see: software, managed cloud services, and SaaS, or software as a service.
Yeah, and that first pattern, software, that's really ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Pro, and allows users complete control of the environment and the ability to implement the security controls that they require, whether on-prem or in the cloud. And this is by far the most common pattern that we see in the federal government, whether with the Department of Defense or civilian agencies.
And the second option is Esri Managed Cloud Services. And this is for organizations that need a little extra help with infrastructure or security. And that environment is in a FedRAMP moderate.
And many of our users are dealing with sensitive location information, so a FedRAMP moderate environment is appropriate in those cases. We have a number of users leveraging Esri Managed Cloud Services, such as USDA, to deploy apps that track disease spread amongst animal and plant populations, and also NTIA, deploying apps in support of their rural broadband initiatives.
And the third pattern is SaaS, or ArcGIS Online, which is an open, ready-to-use environment at a FedRAMP tailored low. And this is a place where organizations can share powerful capabilities out. For example, EPA and their AirNow site has information about air quality to help you plan when you want to go for your jog, or the U.S. Forest Service and finding a cabin in Montana to rent on Forest Service land when we're ready to go for that next trip.
And there's a whole range of powerful capabilities available to our users in ArcGIS Online. And we're moving additional apps to the FedRAMP boundary, such as story maps, dashboards, ArcGIS Hub, Experience Builder, and Insights. And we're also on track to implement a FedRAMP moderate ArcGIS Online offering in 2022.
So we don't just see one pattern being adopted by each agency. We see a combination of these patterns to support their mission.
Yeah, and leveraging each environment for the strengths that it provides.
So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about security, and mobile applications. Over the last year, we've implemented support for PKI and our mobile applications.
And as you know, the use of mobile devices is growing in government, so it's important that we support their security requirements. And we've implemented PKI support in all of our mobile apps, including the latest app, Field Maps, allowing our users to deploy mobile securely in all of the patterns that we've been discussing.
So we've seen a lot of enhancements to security over the past year. So we've deployed a trust site at trust.arcgis.com, and this is really your one-stop shop for everything security.
And these are just a few of the questions that we've been getting on security, so we hope this conversation has been helpful. And we greatly appreciate the collaboration that we've had with many of our users, because security requires teamwork. And we can't implement these enhancements without your help, so thank you.
Thanks, Patty and Brian. And like Patty mentioned, to learn more, visit trust.arcgis.com as your one-stop shop for any questions, or connect with your Esri partner on the national government team. Resuming our American tour, our next stop takes us to Western New York to meet with the Seneca Nation of Indians. A key part of their cultural philosophy revolves around considering the long-term impact of our decisions and ensuring the ones we make today result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. This is known as the 7th generation principle. Bearing that in mind, let's hear their story.
Yaoi Scanout from the Seneca Nation, Jerry Jimerson Neat Gasso, GIS Manager.
And I am Todd LeQuay, the Senior GIS Analyst. We make up the GIS team for the Seneca Nation and been working together for over 17 years.
Our 5 non-contiguous territories cover over 55,000 acres in the southern tier area of Western New York. We have 2 primary residential territories where the majority of our members work, live, raise families, and preserve and celebrate our heritage and culture. The Allegheny Territory is nestled next to the Allegheny State Park, and the Cattaraugus Territory is bordered by Lake Erie. The Seneca Nation is a tight-knit community that has always cared for one another, and that became even more important during the pandemic. Our history and culture teach us to honor and protect one another, with great emphasis on our elders. We take the teachings from the Thanksgiving address to give thanks to the natural world and life that surrounds us. This is what guides our GIS work, protection of our elders, culture, and environment. Our work paints the past, connects to the present, and helps envision our future for the next 7 generations. Culturally, waterways are very important to us. They help take care of the people and the natural environment. To protect our waterways from the harmful effects of pollution, we GPS water quality sample locations and share this data with the public. Additionally, we collect data on invasive species, fish habitat, and restoration improvements, along with medicinal plant locations to sustain our traditions of hunting, fishing, and gathering along our pristine waterways.
To help provide information to the Seneca Nation community at large during COVID-19, we created the Response Hub. It was designed to provide a centralized, authoritative mechanism for important information that includes the latest presidential PSAs, COVID testing events, and PPE distribution details. The site also provides vital health system information, such as testing results, COVID facts and safety reminders, all to keep the public informed and vigilant.
From the beginning of the pandemic, the elders were identified as the priority population. This led us to develop delivery routes for hand delivery of PPE and information distribution. Concerns for our elders' quality of life led to the development of a survey. This privately collected and secured data identified areas of vulnerability, such as food insecurity, PPE supplies, or emotional support. This allowed leadership to make difficult decisions on where to allocate resources. These surveys continue today and have expanded to other vulnerable populations.
While ensuring that government operations continue in a safe manner, the Employee Self-Assessment Survey was created. This required daily survey allows our Human Resources Department to be made aware of any employee experiencing symptoms or travel to restricted areas. Specific answers initiate a procedure if you should report to work or not. This information is quickly viewed through a secured dashboard by the HR department. Since the GIS team shined a bright light on geospatial solutions during COVID, our leadership has really begun connecting the data pieces. They are excited for more visual content, and we now contribute to other efforts such as climate resiliency.
We will continue to develop GIS solutions for our core department users, as well as lending a new hand to departments that now see the benefits of geospatial technologies.
Through all of this, our colleagues have seen how GIS can help keep our community healthy and vibrant.
Yaoi for letting us share our story. Let's see where GIS takes us in the future.
What an inspirational story, complemented by beautiful frozen scenery. Let's warm things up now and head back to sunny California for our final product update, followed by our closing keynote conversation. First, let's discuss the web applications at the heart of any geospatial communication strategy, ArcGIS story maps. To share the latest updates from the development team, here's product engineer Ashley Dew.
Thanks, James. Collaborating with organizations and connecting with our audiences digitally is now more important than ever. We've seen federal agencies using ArcGIS story maps to do just that. I'm really excited to share some of our new storytelling capabilities with you. These new features focus on branding, accessibility, and enhanced storytelling tools. To maintain consistent branding across your organization, you can create and apply a theme to all of your stories with a new theme builder. This gives you control of every detail, with components like the colors, logos, block styles, and hundreds of fonts to choose from. When you make an update, it's automatically applied to all stories with that theme. This really helps storytellers stay in brand with organization and gives them access to transform their stories to reach new heights. Another area we focused on is accessibility. 508 compliance can feel so intimidating, and it can be a challenge, but it's incredibly important. We want to make sure that process is easier for you. ArcGIS Story Maps is built to a CAG 2.0 AA standards, which are the basis for Section 508 legislation, making it accessible to a greater audience. This is crucial. We want to ensure that all of our users are able to access our stories. Things like alternative text, keyboard navigation, screen reader announcements, and optimal color contrast make this possible. The newly released vPowerPort is now available for you to learn more about how we meet these accessibility standards. Now, I'm really excited to share with you the 3 improvements we've made to storytelling tools: enhancements to Express Maps, Map Tour, and the new Image Gallery. With Express Maps, you have the ability to make a simple map in minutes. We've continued to extend the power of these new features by adding options like creating groups, adding custom images to your pins, and configuring sleek pop-ups. This really adds a more refined spatial element to your stories. These capabilities are just so powerful, and they complement the amazing work that you do. Second, if you want to guide your readers through a sequence of locations, you can use a map tour. Map tours are created by uploading photos from your phone or connecting to Survey 123 results from the field. Simply drag and drop all of your photos, and they automatically appear on a map. This creates a storytelling journey for your users to navigate from place to place. Third, visual storytelling is a fundamental part of engaging your audience. And with the new image gallery, you can create beautiful collages in seconds to creatively highlight your compelling photography. Simply batch upload your photos, easily rearrange them, and choose from different gallery styles. We've also made storytelling more available by adding ArcGIS Story Maps to Enterprise. Now you can access it behind your firewall. With these new updates, from Theme Builder to Map Tours to Image Gallery, your stories are more accessible, match your organization's branding, and ultimately, make a greater impact. Back to you, James.
Great work, Ashley and team. I can't wait to see what new national government stories are told using those enhancements. And now, for our final segment, let's dial into a candid conversation on the need for great data and science between former astronaut Dr. Kathy Sullivan, who also served as Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and NOAA Administrator, joined by Esri President Jack Dangermond.
Hey, Kathy, how are you? Nice to see you.
Hey, Jack. Always great to be with you.
Yeah, you're one of my favorite people, as you know.
Mutual.
Really? This makes my little heart patter here. That's great. Well, I just wanted to have people in this conversation get to know you a little bit. And, you know, you're an extraordinary person. It's a little bit of intimidation for me to even talk with you publicly. I mean, you've been to the highest of the heavens and the deepest parts of the oceans. You've run the largest scientific organization on our planet, and it's amazing. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about this morning. Is I wanted people to actually get a little sense of who you are. And I don't know how to do that, really, except just have a conversation. So you've got to talk now.
Well, that works for me. I appreciate the big buildup. My friends just say I'm a woman with extreme ups and downs. So a little bit of positive confirmation is always good.
Good. Well, you deserve it.
But you know, you touched on, thank you. You touched on the organization I had the privilege of leading, NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And NOAA fills a really important niche in my life because I have had these spectacular experiences. I got to make the first maps of a piece of the seafloor in the North Atlantic as a grad student. Then I got to fly in space. And you know, those were, the one was an academic pursuit, the one was fulfilling scientific missions on behalf of others. And what really came to me out of that experience was a desire to be back here on Earth working in some way, in particular, that could make the vantage point of space, you know, the perspective on the planet as a whole that we have nowadays, thanks to the space age, how to actually make that matter. Not just in the sense of I have cool pictures from my space missions and I can, you know, show them to you, but in much more practical ways, because it is data from outer space in particular, added to a lot of research knowledge and in situ data that lets us have the wonders of our day, which are things like, you know, weather forecasts that are worthwhile at 10 days out into the future. Do you know how long humankind has craved some foresight about what's coming at them in the world around them, the natural world? We have that. We have some pretty powerful pieces of that nowadays, and it's really just an extraordinary capacity. And I wanted to be somewhere at the nexus where the science and the data are turned into decision useful information that would matter to you as a decision maker. And that's really the essence of what NOAA does.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of Gil Grosvenor, who is still alive.
Yeah.
He ran the National Geographic, as you know, for many, many years. And I think it was his great-grandfather was Alexander Graham Bell. And he always promoted the idea that the National Geographic Society was about creating geographic knowledge through exploration and so on, and disseminating geographic knowledge through the magazine and film. But I always got excited because there's a third thing, which you really hit on, which is through your exploration, you created new knowledge, but you're really passionate about disseminating the geographic knowledge. And the third dimension is applying geographic knowledge. And to me, that's what a lot of our users that are listening do every day. They make it up that that's the purpose of their life, you know?
That's right.
It's so exciting that you've done both sides in many ways.
Yeah, I really didn't. I loved going out to sea and being an oceanographer, but I felt very unsatisfied that whatever I learned, what data I gathered and whatever I learned, largely was just going onto the pages of a scientific journal. And you know, maybe to be harvested and put into use somewhere down the road, or maybe not, one just didn't know. And I just craved to get closer to that interface. As you put it, it's not just the interface of have the data and put it out. I want to be at the interface where I can help broker the connections. You know, what is it you're trying to decide? What kind of information might sharpen and improve your decisions? And what framework are you working in? I mean, I don't want to just mail you scientific journals. I want to try to understand the conversation you're trying to have with constituents, or the question that you're trying to answer, and slip the right dollop of information into that conversation in a way that almost accelerates your ability to use it, not just throw it over the fence and, you know, leave it to you to figure out how it might help.
Yeah, it's not simply applied science. It's really having that curiosity to do science, but also being conscious at the same time of its meaning on everything from like we're talking about today, biodiversity, conservation, saving the last places, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
It's the Pasteur's quadrant of earth sciences, right? There is a purpose in mind for me, and that is to help humankind live more wisely and live well on this little planet. So live with less of a footprint, live with greater sustainability, and so on.
Yeah, I love that, seeing yourself as a being with a purposeful life. I mean, to me, that just gets me all chilly, you know, it chills. And you've done it, I mean, your whole life. You were a geologist originally, weren't you, when you first got started?
Yeah, actually, both my undergraduate and my PhD degrees were awarded by a geology department. But of course, I consider myself an oceanographer. Oceanography comes in 4 flavors, of course: the geology of the seafloor, the chemistry of the seawater, the physics of waves and tides and currents, and the biology of everything that lives in the ocean. But oceanography didn't really exist as an interdisciplinary science until the 70s, whereas geology, of course, goes back centuries. So not uncommon, if your interest was the geology and geophysics of the deep seafloor, it was not uncommon that your degrees technically came from a geology department.
You and I have talked once before about understanding. And I brought up this notion that as human beings, all of us, we don't know how to explain things very well. You know, doctors, when you go to your doctor, does he really explain? Or a lawyer, oh, geez, they don't really explain it, so that you, mere mortals like me, can understand it. And it seems to me that one of your big contributions has been that you know how to explain things that people like me can understand. And I mean, you've seen things that nobody else has ever seen. Or to use my phrase, you've seen what others didn't or don't or can't. I mean, what goes on in your head that allows you to explain things simply? Or what are the tools that you use to do this?
Well, one factor is codified in one of the great adages I took away from my time in the astronaut corps, and that is the reminder, the caution to don't be stuck in transmit. So my operative word is always conversation. I can transmit what I know in the vocabulary I'm familiar with, and it'll be nothing but a puff of air to a lot of people. It's arcane vocabulary, it's full of acronyms or whatever. And so I may be very happily transmitting for 30 or 40 minutes, but the impact or value of what I've transmitted to whatever the audience is will probably be something between 0 and very low. And I'm not interested in just transmitting. I'm actually interested in exchanges that connect. You know, the etymology of the word conversation is converso, exchange with. And I think it also has a dimension of to change with each other through that exchange. So I try to be really thoughtful as I'm preparing an address or a talk or engaging with someone. My goal is to understand where you're starting and what you're trying to do or know, and engage you there, hook with you, intersect you there, and then bring you along with me on a journey that my experiences can guide you through. But my motivation, certainly in this work we're talking about, my motivation is not just to be the expert and not just to be applauded or something, but to be sure our conversation moves my client, my friend, my audience to some new insight that's valuable to them for their purposes, that helps them better answer a question, or come together as a community where you've got multiple competing interests around some now shared understanding of the place we live in and how it works on different levels. And with that shared understanding, maybe we can move forward together to some new solutions that make us a better community, or improve our lives in this community, or lessen our impact on the environment around us, and yet allow us to live well.
Yeah, there's so much that's going on in my mind. One of them is that conversation like you and I are having is a method of communication. And
it's a social technology.
It's a social technology.
I would argue it is the most important technology in human affairs.
Yet we know so much about it. We know so much about it, and we don't know so much about it. Like, in explaining things, there's no school that you go to that is focused on explaining. And as a result, you may have all kinds of specialist data that you throw together and you throw out. It's like motor mouthing content without context. And this is, I don't know, for me, geography is context and content. So it's underpinning science of all types and organizes the content in various ways. And I love this idea that conversation is a method of communication and a method of understanding, as opposed to presentations, which, by the way, our Federal Users Conference here is full of presentations, content coming at you. But I think people get so much out of interacting with each other, whether it's one-on-one or watching you and I, for example, have a conversation about how you communicate. It's neat.
Well, one of the things I would say about the FedGIS conferences, I've only been to, I think, 2 of them. And yeah, there is a lot of sort of present, but I think something that you guys do a really superb job at with all of your speakers is there's a mindfulness about the purpose of those presentations and how they string together. And your keynotes often do a great job of sort of creating that context. So if you just hear a presentation from different speakers, it's like you have a mental framework that it fits in. So it's presentation's not a bad thing. I think it's just about how mindful is the speaker of the intention of the presentation. And if it's just glorify me, I get 30 minutes on the podium and take some still photos of me so I can use them on my blog. If that's it, then phew.
Yes. So what do you think's going on right now that you want to share with this group?
Oh, so many things going on right now. But what excites me still about all the projects you and I have shared and the work that you guys do, and I talked about this a couple of years ago at an Aspen Institute conference. We all carry these things around nowadays, and so we have stock market information at sports scores and weather. I mean, how many megabytes or terabytes of information of any of those things, pop music, chart standings, right at our fingertips. And what I want to do, and what you guys are in the process of doing, I want to get to where we have, I want the world at my fingertips. Just as readily available as sports scores. I want to be able to hold the world in the palm of my hand, and not just the data again. Because again, the apps we have nowadays, I can tailor that weather app, not to tell me what the satellite measured in raw data, but tell me about my weather where I am or where I'm going to travel, or tell me about the teams I care about. When are we going to have a sufficiently powerful digital twin of this little blue marble, to borrow your phrase, Jack, and then have it available to us on cell phones, on tablets, on laptops, like not just as portals into the massive data, because most human beings on the planet struggle to navigate portals into the massive data. Imagine having a portal into the server that holds all the baseball data. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for, the dollop of information that tells you about the Dodgers or the next World Series game. Look, how do we get more of that for this earth-based, earth-oriented information that fits more into individual interests, or the interests of a mayor, a councilman, a banker, a businessman, someone not skilled in the vocabulary and not skilled in the data interfaces, but wrestling with questions about road layout or development or a conservation easement. That's what I dream of, is that someday that's as conceptually accessible and as informationally accessible as our sports scores and our weather information is today.
I get it. It's like, okay, sometimes I talk about geospatial infrastructure. It's really geography on the web made available to any device, anywhere, anytime, to coin a phrase, an old phrase, or use it. This idea of wiring up the planet so that all of our measurements are openly available, like you did with the, what was that, at NOAA, the coast,
Digital
coast thing, so that it becomes available. But it's not just making the data available, like you say, it's then able to integrate and overlay the data and model the data and visualize, so that we begin to see the complexity of what natural systems in our world are really all about. I mean, you saw it from outer space. You see the context and the content and knew all of it coming together. So I think your little globe is so cool. Well,
and one of the coolest aspects of that experience from space, it's very much shared by the tools that you guys are building, is, first, if we were in orbit, first I would see, here's Africa. First I'd see some part of Africa from this angle, then right on top of it, and then receding the other way around. And that ability, as we all know, that ability to see something from multiple angles in a very fluent kind of way is a real accelerator of comprehension.
Yeah, it's maps. visualization. It's kind of like a language in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
These story maps that are now becoming so popular, I think will take the raw measurements and integrate the data with the models and then let people tell stories about everything. But I'd like to conclude, I guess, with the question, Kathy, of what do you think our users, the people that are actually listening, can actually do at this point? What are the, in these next few years to accelerate the application of science in our government, in our world, actually?
Well, I think continuing the work at all the different scales that each of them is doing to populate this digital twin of our Earth is clearly one dimension of it. The natural planet is, several of those layers, but not all of the layers. So what about the social, the economic, the demographic, the built infrastructure, the regulatory and political dynamics or frameworks and where those intersect. And I guess the other thing I would say, and this is probably not very well formed yet and may not be very well put yet, but maybe keep thinking about this notion both of conversation and of about speaking, moving towards the language and the conceptual framework of the lay user. And so how, maybe even on a story map interface, for example, you've got the Challenger deep story maps on the screen behind you. So if I dive into that and I go through the content that you've built into that story map, boy, is there a way to coach me about some next question that might be interesting to explore, that I could explore with a query that's in a language I understand.
Yes.
And AI ought to be able to start helping us a lot with this, because I don't know how to ask the cell and reference in Latin long. And if you show me a menu this long of all the layers I could select, I probably don't know which layers are probably most relevant to a question that I put in simple English. Yes. But can we get to where I can put the question in simple English and with some heuristics and some, heuristics at AI? The best four to give you an insight about that question will merge right there, and suggestions maybe would pop up right here for, you might click these other three on and off and see what they show you. Something like that, which I think would just explode the number of people that were able to interact with GIS tools. And it's a step in this direction, right? It's in my, Jack, you can wander through all that stuff with a fluency that astonishes me, as all of your team can do. But how do I get to do that?
Yeah,
that would be really powerful.
And making it relevant for a small farmer, relevant for a conservationist in a small watershed, making it relevant for a small business person, as well as the big giants is, I think, the big challenge. But it's extraordinary.
And that's now highly mediated as a services now, which is a good and valuable thing. I'm just curious about how disintermediated could it become, so that there were individual apps with a fair degree of power to them.
Well, to cap it off, what you're saying is that GIS professionals need to come from the end user's application.
Yeah.
And Roger Tomlinson used to talk about this, is figure out what the information products and the experiences are that are in the language of the person who's the receptacle to use it. And then work your way backwards. Don't just have it technology or data driven. But this is, as normal, Kathy, it's extraordinary talking with you. You've got the vision, you have the experience, you bring it all together for us. And I can't help but say thank you. Well, thank you immensely for both this conversation and also the amazing life that you live and have lived. It's an inspiration for all of us. Thank you, Kathy, so much.
Thank you, Jack. I always love talking with you.
That's it for our plenary news broadcast today. From all of us here at Esri, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks so much to the USGS for your long legacy of beautiful cartography, and to NASA for your seemingly never-ending stream of amazing data used by rocket scientists all the way through to school kids.
Thank you to our federal law enforcement officers and intelligence professionals in the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice for your dedication and contributions to our national security.
I'd like to thank the Department of Interior for their support and collaboration in pushing Cloud GIS forward.
Thank you, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, for building the maps, charts, and foundation data used to support national security.
Thank you so much to the Census Bureau for making such a wealth of attributes publicly available.
I'd like to give a special thanks to everyone keeping our nation safe in the defense and intelligence communities. I know your work often can't openly be celebrated, but it's truly appreciated.
Thank you to the EPA. Your wonderful work, creating extensive story maps guidelines, and making your stories more accessible helps benefit the entire storytelling community.
Thank you to NOAA for all the compelling apps you build that give your users the ability to make data-driven decision-making.
Thank you to USDA APHIS for sharing the great data sets you use to better protect and understand our natural environment.
I would like to thank everyone across the whole federal government for the amazing work that you do every single day.
Oh, you're still here? Well, since you stuck around, here's one more product update on time series forecasting. Enjoy.
Today, it's more important than ever to be able to anticipate what's coming, to make accurate predictions, and be prepared. Time series forecasting allows us to do just that. So you're collecting data over time, and you want to predict future time periods based on that existing data. We're really excited to share with you a new tool set in ArcGIS Pro to do time series forecasting that was built specifically for solving spatial problems and making informed spatial decisions.
For example, these tools can help you use current monthly unemployment data to understand and predict future unemployment. Or you could use decades of air pollution data to identify patterns and predict future health burden. Really, any data that you've collected over time can be used to create powerful predictions.
Now, like Erica's examples illustrate, time series data comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So some time series might follow common patterns like linear or S-shaped curves. Other time series might have seasonal or cyclical patterns that can make it more challenging to forecast. This tool set is really built to help you deal with that variety of time series data. You can forecast using traditional statistical approaches and using machine learning-based approaches.
We know you each have different data that you use and different questions you're trying to answer. One size doesn't fit all. For example, if you're trying to model COVID-19 data, you might see big jumps in your numbers on Mondays due to reporting practices. You need a model that can account for that. Likewise, if you're trying to model unemployment data, you need to take into account both short and long-term trends in your predictions. Really, a flexible approach is key to making accurate predictions.
Exactly. Now, my favorite part of what we've built is actually how we've made it spatial. Now, while you can use a single model across your entire study area, we've also built in the ability for you to allow those models to vary across space. So in some locations, it may choose a curve fit forecast because those time series follow those common patterns, those common curves. In other locations, it may choose a random forest-based approach because of the complexity of the time series in those locations. And we can map the models across space. And when we see swaths of locations that have the same model, it gives us this really crucial information and understanding, helping us see that those places all share similar characteristics.
This really helps us reveal patterns and questions that might otherwise remain hidden. These new time series forecasting tools with geography truly integrated are a game changer for any federal agency. We know that time series forecasting can be used to improve budgeting, to help identify potential fraud, and to inform policy decisions that take into account future conditions. And with location completely integrated, these predictions are now more accurate and more actionable than ever.